I agree. Their voices are being discounted.
Yeah.
And I think that the voter ID law is a way to kind of ensure that, right? So how do we make, when we talk about disenfranchising a particular group, we can see from history all of the steps that were taken, right, in order for you to be able to vote, right? You had to take a test in order to be able to vote, but that only affected a certain group of folks, right? So I would like us to steer clear away from the, I think we should have learned from the lessons of the past, and I would like us to steer clear away from that direction. And what I would like to propose is one of the things that kind of stands out are for folks that have state IDs, right? You have to update your photo periodically. I think mine was every 2 years. But also for the communities where they don't necessarily have an address, how do we kind of keep them in loop? I think that we should create a system, in my opinion, that is that the Secretary of State's office can serve as a liaison with those communities, those nonprofits that are providing supports for those folks, and actually do a discovery. I would like to learn about how we can make sure that we're targeting and reaching out to those groups that are left behind. I think that legislatures can be out of touch because they're not homeless, right? Exactly. They're not spending that time. You know, they have a more comfortable life, right? In every respect. And so I think that we could do a little bit more due diligence by actually having community liaisons where we're talking to people and not just creating laws to draft it. So I'm always kind of a proponent of really being in that space to understand what that pain point is, rather than some politician just deciding, this is how we're going to do it, but not really connecting with that community. And so that is something that, although the Secretary of State doesn't necessarily decide, but that would be a legislation that I would push to get funding for, that we are doing more in this space to talk to folks like the Amos House, right? To talk to places that, because you might have folks also that fit into a different respect that are not necessarily homeless, but they are leaving from an abusive home, right? They do not want, their ex-partner, boyfriend, spouse, whatever, knowing where they live. And so that puts their life at jeopardy, or they feel like they live in constant fear. That is the worst feeling that someone would have to go through. And to know that they have, someone has that information on file or has a connection with someone else to either use the law, right, to get that information, or to, they have some kind of contact within government or etc., right, to get that information. How can we be mindful of those unique circumstances, and how can we make sure that we have a soul to these people? They still have the right to vote, right? So how can we be a community liaison to make sure that they also have access to voting, and how to ensure that their rights are protected as well, their privacy is protected as well? Because some folks can't necessarily get a no contact order.
Oh, I know. Well,
that itself can be a challenge. Right. So, because I know someone will say, well, they should have a no contact order, and then that'll protect them. That itself can be a lot of bureaucracy, and you don't need to get that.
They just recently passed a law, I think it was this last session, about protecting the identities and public documents of people leaving abusive situations. But I don't know how you access that law. I'm not sure what the processes is, and I'm sure if you have a lawyer or an advocate working for you, it's easier.
And if you don't, because you are, a little bit more financially challenged than others, you might not be, one, won't know, two, don't have access to an attorney, three, you're already in a state of fear and anxiety that's not something that is at the first of your thought. It's not like, I need to make sure that I can vote. It's more so, I need to make sure me and my child are safe.
Well, that is true. That's one of the reasons, I think, another reason that people who are in a homeless situation don't vote as much is because it's not as high on your list of priorities as survival, right? As
Correct.
Finding a roof and finding food, finding
shelter,
just the medical stuff you need, right? So it's good. It's an ongoing process.